Good morning. It is 8:29 a.m. on Monday, September 5th, 2016. I'm Christiane Ellis, and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. Excuse me, goodness. So what I realized yesterday after recording the video was that it was Sunday, and so I was supposed to be doing my Avatar: The Last Airbender Season 1, Episode 2 recap, but I forgot. Maybe because I record these things first thing in the morning, and haven't been doing it for that long. So I will do it today. Today I will be talking about Avatar: The Last Airbender Season 1, Episode 2, The Avatar Returns. And I feel like, in hindsight, Episodes 1 and 2 really should be watched together. Even more than most, they are really parts 1 and 2 of a two-parter. And it's also, Episode 2 is really where the show becomes itself, whereas episode 1 feels all like it's all set up and getting ready in comparison. It starts off a little heavy-handed with the whole bit about Aang taking responsibility. So first of all, the village, furious with Aang and Katara as they come back because they accidentally signaled the Fire Nation. And while it's legit for them to be angry, because I mean, this is a life or death situation. He may have just doomed them all. Who knows what the Fire Nation might do, and they're defenseless. I mean, that's like that. So it's a real concern. But Aang basically just takes full responsibility and is willing to leave. But then with Katara threatening to leave with him, both in his defense and also because she doesn't want to give up the possibility of finding a waterbending master. I felt like when the kids are like, "Oh, don't go, Aang, I'll miss you," like that part felt a little bit like not quite earned. There's peaks of being kids show type of stuff there. But it's interesting too because Sokka in this sequence is he's the one that's most angry and demanding that Aang leave. And I was thinking, because I couldn't really quite remember everything, I was imagining, like, I know that I come to love Sokka, the character, but he's not super lovable in these early sequences. And so I was kind of curious, it's like, I wonder if I would feel the same way about him watching it new, and I'm just sort of wondering in retrospect, like, well, where does my love for Sokka come in? And it turns out to just be later this episode. So Zuko and the Fire Nation troops just rammed their ship straight through the wall of the village. And here's where we start to warm on Sokka again a little bit. Just first of all, when we see everybody getting ready for the battle, his face paint's just badass, right? It's kind of like sort of like a seal and like a killer whale a little bit, I suppose. And then the sequence does a really good job of just convincing us this is not even a contest. They're so outmatched. These are real soldiers against, it's basically one, young teenager. It's just, there's no contest. And yet, Sokka does not give up. Even though they dispatch him just kind of handily every time, he refuses to get up until, like, Zuko pretty much has to humiliate him. And then even still, he gets kind of a little bit of a last laugh with his trusty boomerang. And it's an old joke of like, oh, you throw the boomerang and it's like, you missed. But then it comes back around and hits him in the back of the head. Like, that's not a new trope. But part of me loved it just because the boomerang continues to be a thing, and it was nice to see its origin here. It's also a nice fake out when we see Zuko reach forward, and it looks like he's going to grab Katara, but then he actually grabs Gran Gran instead, and it's a reminder that he's expecting the Avatar to be old. And so everybody's confused because Zuko's sure that the Avatar is there. The others are saying, "Well, we did have a strange guest, but it wasn't the Avatar. Certainly wasn't old, like you're saying." But then Aang shows up, um, and immediately is he's defending himself. But the instant he sees that it's possible that some of these villagers could get hurt, even just while Aang is defending himself, he immediately stops fighting and says, "I'll go with you. Just leave them alone." And it's noble of him, but we also recognize soon that he has no intention of staying with them. He is absolutely planning to escape as soon as possible, and that's foreshadowed a little bit, or it's he puts a lantern on that a little bit because as he's leaving, he just calls back. He's like, "Take care of Appa until I get back." Appa being his flying bison, and um, let's see. I'm looking for, um, and so if we were starting to become a little bit more endeared to Sokka from his persistent defense of the village in the face of overwhelming odds, where we finally realize, oh, okay, he's a good guy, is, the Fire Nation has left with Aang, and Katara is going to go after him, and I don't care, you're not going to talk me out of it, you can't say anything. And meanwhile, Sokka is busy with stuff, and he's not listening, and then finally it reveals that he's actually been preparing a boat himself. Are you gonna keep talking, or are you coming with me? And it's like, what it took maybe was for Aang to put the interests of the village ahead of his own, and that is what convinced Sokka to now do the same and put himself out there to rescue Aang. And it's like, our team is coming together. And so back on the ship, we have what I was struck by in this episode, watching some of what Zuko is going through, is that there's a lot of similarities with him and Kylo Ren from Star Wars Force Awakens in a lot of ways. The idea that Zuko is powerful, kind of in charge, but also young, a little insecure, certainly impatient. And there's just, I'm going to keep watching for more parallels like that. And then Aang basically, as soon as he's with only a couple of guys, just immediate escape. And it's fascinating because what we see in this sequence where he's running around with his hands tied, he's basically just looking to find his staff so that he can try to escape with it. And we see this dynamic of him being so light on his feet and kind of superficially calm and unconcerned, but with the occasional moment of real fear in his eyes where we see that he really does recognize how serious this is and that he is in real danger, especially when he gets cornered by Zuko in Zuko's room when he goes to recover his staff. But ultimately, and partly because nobody in this time period has ever fought an Airbender before, Zuko's kind of unprepared and is defeated. So Aang escapes, and now Zuko is going to be prepared. And so the last major sequence of this is, first we get a big reveal that, of course, Appa, the flying bison, can actually fly, and is helping Sokka and Katara to come and rescue. But we get the final bit where, despite everything, Aang is forced into the water, and it looks bad, but then eyes open, all glowy, and all of a sudden he's not just a surprisingly good fighter for a kid, but now he's more godlike, and it's like, okay, this is more like what we imagine the Avatar being. And then, of course, they don't call it by name, but and it's treated as mysterious, like even Aang's not fully 100% sure what's happening. This is the Avatar state, which becomes a thing, as we develop and he learns more about his abilities. And so, the day is saved, Aang, Katara, and Sokka are able to escape and temporarily strand the Fire Nation ship on an iceberg. And so now with the end of this episode, we've mapped out what the show is going to be, or at least for this first story arc. And so that's why the part episodes 1 and 2 really feel like they're a two-parter, because one is just set up for this, and then now two resolves the initial conflict and maps out what's going to be the broader arc, which is Aang and Katara both need a water bending master, and they're going to find one at the North Pole. They're already at the South Pole, so they have to travel to the North Pole to get it. In the meantime, Zuko and his uncle Iroh are now 100% aware of who the Avatar is, what he looks like, who he's traveling with, and they're going to continue to try to catch him. And this time, they won't underestimate him. So that's where we establish it. And so it was weirdly kind of a relief watching this episode, just because the first one, it's okay. It's got these hints of niceness, or like nice stuff in it, but then this episode 2, when I watched that, the pieces kind of click into the place, and it feels a bit more like, yes, this is the show that I remember loving. All right, so anyway, that is The Avatar Returns. So I will be back attempting to restore my Sunday schedule on next Sunday to talk about episode 3. Talk to you tomorrow for 5 more minutes.